Okay, we've got our central file created. Now we go to part 2, creating the local copy. This is the file that you actually do the editing with, as we saw in our diagram above, where we create our local file that communicates with that central file we made in step 1. Okay, so the first thing we do to create a local copy is this. You go and use Revit. You start Revit up, then you click open. Okay, then you navigate to the server and to the location of that central file, okay, and you click on it, okay, but you make sure that it says create new local. Make sure you check the create new local toggle. It is by default on. So when you go to open a central file, which is what you're attempting to do, Revit throws this up and says you should create a new local file. It's smart enough to know that. Okay, do not open the central file without doing this, okay, unless you're an administrator, because you should not go in and edit the central file. That's the main database. You leave it alone. Okay, so open the central file, have this check mark done, and then off you go. So you open it up, and you've created your local copy. Okay. And I just have a little joke in here. Once I saw a new Revit user just blatantly go into Windows Explorer and double click on a central file and go in and start editing, and I just about had a little fit there. So step 7, you've created open the central file. Now you save it. So you say save, and you save this as a local copy on your C drive. Put your own name in front of it. So you might call it, Halifax Theater with your name. .revit, or consider Revit prompts you with the name by appending the central file name with your Revit username. You actually have a Revit username and you didn't know it. Okay, so step 6 and 7 really is open the central file, check this off, and then save it to your C drive. That's it. Now you have a local copy that is communicating with that central file. You've now created the link between the file on your C drive. C drives work much faster when you're working in Revit, and it does the synchronizing with the server file and the central file. Okay, step 6, step 7. Step 8. You go in now and you work on this new local file that's on your C drive. You go in, you check out the work sets you want. You can borrow elements and objects off other people. You can, work and edit the model using the work sets. And what you're doing is you're saving to your local file regularly, and you also save and synchronize back to the central file on a regular basis. Okay? So you're saving your little local file that is also communicating back and forth with the central file. Okay, and when you're done with your work sets, you're not editing, you relinquish them. Okay, so you can either relinquish borrowed elements or you can relinquish the work set. Okay, so once you're done editing them, you give them back to the central file, and that way it frees them up for someone else to check out that work set. So really easy. Okay. Step 9, use the Reload Latest tool to update your local file with the central file, but not push your changes out to the central file. So this is a one-way communication. Reload Latest doesn't do a full synchronization. All it does is update your local file with what's been saved to the central file. For whatever reason, you don't want to push your stuff out to the central file because you might not want to include it in the model right away. Okay, step 10, etc. Okay, so at the end of the day, you've been working, you've been saving your changes to the central file and locally taking care of business. At the end of the day, what you do is you save your local file to your C drive. Then you save to the central file and synchronize with the central file. Then you relinquish all elements and work sets. Then you close your local file. Then you hit the golf course. So there's a process of shutting down your local file. Save locally, save to the central, and synchronize with the central. Relinquish everything. Then close the file, and then hit the golf course or wherever you happen to be going. So we'll go through this all. This is just the theory part. It is also highly recommended and best practice to actually repeat step 6 and 7 each day. Okay, so this sounds crazy, but true. So, in other words, each day, or every second day at least, what you do is you literally scrap your local file. You can rename it, put it away, file it away. And then you go to step 6 and open up the central file, create a new local file, save it as a local file, and then your local file is fresh and new. Okay, over time, your local file, if you keep the same local file over a period of days and weeks, it can develop issues and problems. It's problematic. So over time, local files can develop issues. Okay, they can even affect the central model. So don't keep your local files around too long. Okay. Rename the local file and save it away somewhere, but make a new, fresh local file at least every couple days. Okay, now let's get in to try that. So just before we do that, I just want to show that step 6 and 7 that we would repeat. So there is people that go in every day and create a new local file. So you've shut down your file at the end of the day, everything's perfect. The central file now, when the lights go out in the office, now has everyone's information back in the home base. The next morning, everyone comes into work, they start up their Revit, they open the central file, make absolute sure that this is checked off, go in, and then save that file on your C drive again. Give it a different name if you want, but save it on the C drive and put your name in front of it or somewhere in here. When you save a central file, it actually prompts you with your name, and then you can go ahead and work on it. Okay, so every morning you could go in, open up the central file, create a new local file, save your file, rename it, and off you go checking out your work sets. And that way you keep a nice clean local file, which keeps a nice clean central file. And if everyone kind of follows those rules, there won't be a problem. So there's a few notes for you. I do have a couple more notes over here. That is off the help menu about work sharing and display modes. This is nice stuff that's been added in 2012, and it will actually color display whether you're the owner or whether you've checked out objects, whether they're out of date or not, and which elements are assigned to particular work sets. So there's some really nice display aspects as part of Revit 2012, which is right down on your screen down in here once we enable our work set. So we'll talk about that. So some nice 2012 changes. That's it for the boring theory part.